Good afternoon, everyone. Um, Wanted to talk with you a little bit. I had to come inside because the noise from the motorcycles really got nerving. So, as you can see, I'll pan around and show you when I was out on the balcony that it's still cloudy here. We had a long night last night. All the family couldn't sleep. I think it was around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that they finally were able to doze off. People were drinking and singing karaoke all night. Even when I woke up around 6:30 this morning, they were still singing. So, uh, but now the singing has stopped. But there's still the young kids that are roaming the streets and they're riding their loud motorcycles up and down and revving them up, and it's pretty annoying still.
Welcome to our paradise where dreams come alive. Hand in hand we'll soar like eagles in the sky. Every little
So
moment.
today is January 1st, 2025, here in the Philippines. But I wanted to share with something with you that was on my mind, and I'm sure it's on the mind of a lot of you during this time of year. Uh, People always have their so-called New Year's resolutions, right? People always want to make resolutions to take better care of themselves, right? So I want to talk about something that um, now, I'll be talking more about other health things in the future videos, but this video I want to focus more on diabetes. Now I'm going to touch on some other aspects of health in this video as well, but just know that it'll be a small part. The majority of this will be more on diabetes and getting more of an underground um, discussion about what's going on with diabetes. Um, so in the future, I will talk about high blood pressure, heart disease, and other health-related illnesses um, in other future videos. But why do I want to talk about diabetes? Well, because this is pretty much a pandemic. Um, because regardless of whether you live in the country, in the world, millions and millions of people from all over the world are enduring or having to work with their bodies and dealing with diabetes. And since I've been here in the Philippines, more and more people are being diagnosed with diabetes. Something that really didn't happen as often when I first started coming here a couple of decades ago. I mean, more and more people, and young ones, are dying from the complications of diabetes. People are getting strokes. So, yeah, it's pretty serious pandemic, no matter where you live. In America, there is quite a few people with diabetes as well. And I have a lot of friends that have diabetes. And, but there is so much information out there, and it depends um, on where you live and your culture that can dictate and how you can treat diabetes. Now, sadly, thousands are dying every day here in the Philippines and America as a result from complications from diabetes. And I'm sure it's similar results throughout the world. But why is that? Well, let's first talk about why I feel I am qualified to talk about diabetes. So I'm gonna refer to my notes back and forth because this is a pretty long, lengthy video, and I'm gonna try to keep it as short as I possibly can. And so we'll try to get through this as pretty quick, but hopefully you can understand what I'm trying to express, and maybe this will help you. Um, but I was raised in Northwest Georgia. Both my mother and my grandmother had type 2 diabetes. And they had a host of other issues related to diabetes, including heart disease. My mother was a big advocate for alternative treatments. My grandmother was too, don't get me wrong. Um, in fact, when I was a child, my mother would take us to an herb doctor located in Flintstone, Georgia. And at that time, I really didn't appreciate the what she was trying to do. I hated liquid herbs. any liquid medicine for that matter. And to be honest, it tasted horrible. But as time went on, I began to appreciate things a little bit more and more, especially what my mother was trying to do. Now, my mother could have been a botanist. My grandmother too. My grandmother had a green thumb. She can grow anything. My mother and my grandmother could both identify plants and what they were good for, and just by looking at them. I never developed that skill. Although I studied herbs and I can recognize certain names, be able to get information, what they're good for, what they're not. But I always had an herb book. I would have to go back and forth and see what was good for this and good for that. But when I became a nurse, that kind of went to the sidelines because in the medical community, alternative treatments were frowned upon. Why? Well, because there has not been a lot of research done on these type of treatments. Why would they put a lot of research on something that could not be patented or could make them billions of dollars? Doctors in the medical community are intertwined with pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceuticals are one of the biggest contributing factors to their profit margins. Doctors and hospitals make a lot of money from these companies. They're basically in bed with these companies, right? So I worked as a nurse since the early 90s. I specialized in emergency medicine and critical care. I also had a hobby of studying diseases and their causes. Why? Why would you ask? Why would I be really particularly interested? Well, because as I mentioned earlier, my mother and my grandmother had heart diseases and diabetes. Um, my mother would take about 20 pills a day. I'm not talking about herbs and things like that. I'm talking about prescribed from her doctor. Um, so she had to carry around a luggage every time just full of medicine. My grandmother had to take a lot too, don't get me wrong, but not as many as my mom. Um, and um, my mother suffered from heart attacks and strokes. My grandfather, which was my mother's father, he died at the age of 53 from a massive heart attack. My mother had her first stroke at the age of 35, and my mother died at the age of 62. I know I mentioned that in one of my previous videos. She died as a result of a stroke. My mother had at least 3 heart attacks and strokes that we knew of and that was documented. My father died at the age of 65 as a result of colon cancer. My oldest brother has heart disease and diabetes. He's had several heart attacks and several strokes. Um, my sister, who is older than I am, also has diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease. My youngest brother has severe heart disease, and as of yet, he doesn't have diabetes that I know of. But he's had several strokes, and he is now disabled as a result of his strokes. So I took an interest in my own personal health, and I researched why would we, as a family, being bombarded by all these diseases and health issues. And I wanted to see if this was just a familial component, a family component due to genetics, or if it was lifestyle choices. My doctors would often say it was a combination of both. Poor diet, exercise, and of course genetics. And these were of course an educated guess. Uh, they really didn't know for sure. Um, but I felt doomed to follow in their health crisis or their situations. I became overwhelmed and truly became concerned for my own health. So I became my own best advocate. I started doing research. I started going to have testing done. And sadly, the um, uh, the doctors didn't share my concerns. It was very hard to find sympathy. They were just like, hey, if you get something, just take a pill. And I wanted more than that. I wanted to do it, because I was always told that prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So anything you do to prevent, and so that all they would tell me is, oh, eat healthy and exercise, and that was it. Um, but really, that's not the answer that I wanted. People who are health conscious all the time, they're running all the time, and they seem to eat good, and they still die young. They still suffer from heart attacks and diabetes, and it's like, why? They seem to be healthy. So I was really interested in getting to the root of the problem myself, and you know, but insurance companies took the sides of the doctors, and a lot of the testing that I wanted, they would not approve. I just couldn't get it done. I had to go outside of their scope of care to get things done. Welcome to the world of medicine and healthcare, especially in America. Now, as a medical professional, um, we were instructed to use caution in sharing medical information outside of the boundaries of medical practice, and which is heavily regulated by big pharma, right? So these pharmaceutical companies really control a lot of what we can say and do. Doctors also will not share information outside of what they call evidence-based practice. Now, with you, because of fear of losing their licenses. And in other words, the medical community will not bite the hands that feed them, right? Now, I want to share with you this disclosure. Um, Take everything I say here with a grain of salt. Um, in other words, you need to do your own research. You need to be your own best advocate. And also, take everything your doctor says with a grain of salt, too. Um, they may not always have your best interest at heart, and one doctor will have a different opinion from another. So it's best for you to do your own research and be your own best advocate. But I do want to give you food for thought, or this is an expression saying I want to give you something to think about. So let's jump into the topic of diabetes. First of all, let's talk about why it has become a pandemic now. Back in the 50s and 60s, I know majority of my viewers were not from that age, and neither am I. I'm from the 70s, but I studied and done research, and also I grew up in the medical community, so kind of seen how things evolved over a period of time. But back in the early 50s and 60s, the medical community hypothesized that, or made an educated guess, that diabetes and heart disease was a direct result of poor exercise and a fatty diet. So the American diet quickly evolved to include fat-free alternatives. Doctors and other medical providers got on board and promoted this idea. Now, I remember studying this in elementary school and in high school. Of course, I became a nurse, and it was a very big topic during my college days. And many of you may remember the food pyramid. It's discussed even here in the Philippines. My kids brought home papers with a food pyramid on it. But what was the result of that movement? Following that food pyramid, it failed. Now, why do I say that? Because fat was not the culprit. It really was not the culprit um, of this issue of health illnesses and diseases that we face today. Um, or should I say, it was not the only contributing factor, nor was it the lack of exercise. It was, in fact, a combination of several factors. Let's see what happened during those time periods, and let's get a good understanding of how this all started. People began to work more hours, right? Big industries were developed, wage increases and higher paying jobs started to be seen. It was an economic boom, because the wars and the Great Depression, uh, people were beginning to become more focused on making a living instead of eating healthy. TV dinners, fast food was quickly becoming the choices of the day. Then came microwave dinners. Processed food was a multi-million dollar business, and it really provided a cheap means of feeding large families. Processed foods now are found in every market in the world and in large quantities. And sadly, it is more affordable to eat processed foods than organic or natural foods. Now, let's not forget all the sugary foods that you see at the checkout counters and the front displays of the stores, right? We see all those. Now, let's be honest, those are delicious and are very addictive, right? Humans crave these types of foods. We do. Now, let's discuss a little bit about fat-free or low-fat foods. Look at the labels. You will see that they have added lots of sugar or sugar alternatives such as saccharin or other alcohol sugars. High fructose corn syrup is a big one in America. Um, then we can talk about GMO, genetically modified um, ingredients or genetically modified produce or foods that's in our market as well. The farming industry has more demands for providing food to a larger population of people. Then you have the drive to make more money, right? The name of the game is to make more money. The GMO has made that possible because there are more disease and insect or pest resistant, right? But at what cost? Whenever you alter the genetic makeup of anything, there's always side effects. So stay tuned, everyone. For my next video, I'll continue and we'll discuss about what is diabetes. And I'll get into the molecular problems and the deep down and gritty um, about diabetes. So stay tuned for that video coming up in the next few days. And as always, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that when the next video comes out, you'll be notified. And I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon. And remember, life is short, so you want to make the best of it. So have a good day, everyone. And I'll see you in my next video.